Number 9. Who is Charlotte Lindstrom? According to some of the recent reports, Charlotte Lindstrom is living a quiet life in Sweden, her native country. Other sources claim she's changed her name and is still receiving death threats as a result of her former life. Since 2007, her story has been heavily featured in the media, both in Australia and Scandinavia. This is because of her relationship with Ecstasy Kingpin, Stephen Spalivira, and steps that led to her being charged of conspiracy to commit murder. Through the scandal that followed, their love affair made headlines around the world and concluded with Lindstrom testifying against Spaloviro after almost wasting away behind bars. Number 8. Who is Stephen Spalivira? The son of a suburban migrant family, Stephen Spaliviro's story really took off towards the late 80s. At the time, the young Italian-Australian, who had a self-taught knack for mechanical engineering, got a job fixing luxury cars in Los Angeles. He was convicted in 1989 for running a stolen Porsche racket and sent to Avenel State Prison. From that point on, his life read like the events of the hit TV series Breaking Bad. While in Avenel, Spaloviro met a Dutch chemical engineer named Igor. In the beginning, Igor taught Spaloviro how to survive the gang stabbings in the prison yard. As time passed, Igor revealed that he'd gotten into cooking ecstasy after his wife died of cancer. He reportedly did it to care for his daughter Emily, who was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Igor was sent to prison after the DEA kicked his door down and found him cooking about 200 pounds of the drug. After Igor's sister told him that he could no longer care for Emily, he made a pact with Spaloviro. Igor would teach him how to make and sell drugs, and in return, Spaloviro would take care of Emily with the money he earned. Over the course of the next 18 months, Spaloviro became Igor's student and learned how to make ecstasy from precursor drugs like pseudoephedrine. By the time he was extradited back to Australia, he was no longer a car thief, but an ecstasy cook eager to put his knowledge to practice. Number 7. Becoming an ecstasy kingpin. After his release from prison, Spaloviro used what he'd learned to become an ecstasy kingpin. He made good on his promise to take care of Igor's daughter and would frequently send money to his sister. Spaloviro was a hands-on cook who built gigantic reaction vessels, which were used to produce copious amounts of pure ecstasy. His business really took off once he learned how to make pills from an unwitting legal vitamin producer whom he met in Amsterdam through Igor's sister. He built new reaction vessels, bought pill binding powder and pill presses capable of producing 7,500 pills per minute. By 2001, the drug trade had earned him a $23 million profit. The fact that his business had grown so quickly without detection from law enforcement made him feel untouchable. By his own account, he fell in love with the adrenaline. However, the true highlight of his operation was achieved when Igor got out of prison. Igor asked Spaloviro to meet him in Shanghai, where a Chinese company was willing to part with a 550-ton stockpile of precursor chemical. Once in the warehouse, Spaloviro claimed he felt like the boy in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He and Igor calculated and deduced that from the stockpile, they'd be able to make 3.5 billion pills and earn a profit of $21 billion. The majority of the chemicals were shipped by Igor to Switzerland, but Spaloviro managed to import enough to Australia to make 11 tons of ecstasy. He would ship millions of dollars to China by stashing the money in foam boxes of live lobsters. When Charlotte Lindstrom became part of Spaloviro's world, he was one of the biggest ecstasy manufacturers of the day. Number 6. How did Lindstrom and Spaloviro meet? In 2002, Spaloviro owned a club in Sydney called Minx, where he laundered his drug money. At the time, Lindstrom was a backpacker from Sweden, working as a part-time model and hostess for the exclusive Hemisphere nightclub in Sydney. She met Spaloviro, 18 years her senior, in 2003 during an interview for a job at Minx. The romance took off quickly, and it wasn't long before Lindstrom learned that her boyfriend was a large-scale drug manufacturer. This, however, wasn't a hindrance in their romantic relationship, which was characterized by a life of opulence and excess. Number 5. living the high life. With Spaloviro by her side, Lindstrom would know a glamorous life complete with fast cars and extravagant yacht parties. They lived in a $3 million waterfront property decorated with Chinese antiques. At their home, Spaloviro hosted all-night parties where he served punch spiked with ecstasy. As a model, Lindstrom loved to design dresses and lavish jewelry, and Spaloviro spared no expense in making sure she was happy. In their subsequent prison letters, they both made reference to the fairy tale they wanted to live together, yet their lifestyle was all founded on Spaloviro's massive drug operation, which soon came under heavy investigation. Number 4. End of the fairy tale. In 2005, one of Spaloviro's shipments was intercepted. His assets were seized and he was charged in connection to drug distribution. While on bail, he tried one final drug reaction, which he later claimed was the largest ever attempted up to that point. It involved half a ton of chemicals which produced an ecstasy pile measuring 3 feet in height. The process was too much for the reaction vessels to handle, and a fire broke out at his Riverstone factory in the suburbs of Sydney. As he fled the factory in a panic, he left an important clue behind in the form of his Louis Vuitton sneakers. By then, the authorities had bugged his house and car. They also had 2 key witnesses. They arrested Spaloviro, but only charged him for the scraps discovered at the Riverstone factory, almost 100 pounds of ecstasy. Number 3. Hitman contract. The hitman contract represented Lindstrom's transition from model to criminal. The testimonies from the 2 witnesses reportedly had the potential of putting Spaloviro behind bars for life. While at the Metropolitan Remand and Reception Center, Spaloviro allegedly met another inmate who offered to kill the witnesses for a price. He phoned Lindstrom from prison and instructed her to meet with a hitman and pay him to make his problems disappear. They agreed upon a price around $82,000 per hit. The police were tipped off that the lives of the witnesses were in danger, but by that time, they already had Lindstrom under surveillance. In one of her phone conversations, she mentioned that she wanted them to be taken to the cemetery. It was the break in the case the authorities had been waiting for. The supposed hitman that she met up with in May 2007 was actually an undercover police officer. As captured by several CCTV cameras, Lindstrom was arrested May the 26th on conspiracy to commit murder. She'd be the only one convicted on that count, as Spaloviro's lawyers maintained that she'd acted on her own, motivated by love. Spaloviro, along with 2 other defendants, were found not guilty in the murder plot. In the years since the hitman contract, public opinion has usually been mixed. Some, including a judge on the case, stated that Lindstrom was naive, that she romanticized her relationship with Spaloviro and was manipulated by him. Others believed that she was familiar with his business, that she acted in cold blood, and knew exactly what she was doing. Number 2. Lindstrom testifies against Spaloviro. On the inside, life wasn't easy for Lindstrom, a beautiful woman. She caught the unwanted attention of other inmates who sought to take advantage of her. She developed anorexia on the inside and was slowly wasting away. She eventually made a deal to testify against Spaloviro at his drug trial in return for a reduced sentence. In one of the letters she wrote to him in prison, Lindstrom said, "I've tried to block you out, but I can't. The truth is, I still love you with my whole heart and soul." She added, "But the only person who can help me now is me. I'm not prepared to spend 5 to 8 years in jail for something I did for love." She was also concerned for her safety, as she was reportedly receiving death threats. Images which made headlines around the world in 2009 showed Lindstrom arriving at Spaloviro's trial wearing a bulletproof vest and only weighing around 80 pounds. Number 1. Life after prison. Spaloviro and Lindstrom were reportedly still in love when they went to prison and continued to write letters to each other. However, it didn't last, and Lindstrom made parole on May the 25th, 2010. For the crime of trying to have people killed, she only served 3 years in prison. The very next day, she was deported to Sweden, where she reportedly lives under an assumed identity. The once loving couple would cease to communicate. Spaloviro wrote 2 books in prison. One was a memoir expose called Pills of God, dedicated to Lindstrom. which also contained some of the letters she had written him in prison. The other was called Narco X and described how he became an ecstasy kingpin, that his operation dwarfed that of the fictional Walter White, and that the chemicals used to make ecstasy are much more dangerous than those used to make methamphetamine. For his drug-related crimes, he spent 11 years in prison. He was released in 2017 and, according to the latest reports, has kept away from narcotics. He was also committed to building a life alongside his new girlfriend, model Chelsea Coates, whom he met on Tinder. Thanks for watching. Do you think Charlotte Lindstrom should have spent more time in prison? Let us know in the comments section below.